organizers, everybody to attend and to be patient. I must have accumulated some good karma not to be the very last to torture you. I'm sorry to say that, John. I'm psychiatrist and psychotherapist interested in the dialogue between the psychotherapy, counseling, and Buddhist Vajrayāna practices, techniques. And I have three messages to convey. I will briefly go through some suggestions for them, but first is that body as a very foundation of experience, as we heard by Dasho Karma at the very beginning, is somewhat neglected in psychotherapy. It has become better, but it is still like that. So we need to bring it back or think of it more. Second, it has been explored, body has been explored in Buddhist practices, Vajrayāna practices especially, quite extensively. So it is, I think, a good way to make the dialogue more open and let those practices and techniques, some of them which have been not incorporated into the mainstream psychotherapy, to do so or to be that. So, and I suggest that a Google Translate platform for that could, as a Google Translate platform, could serve phenomenology as systematic research of experiences. But I will try to argue for that. Should point where? Yeah. Just very briefly where I come from. I come from Slovenia, which is a very tiny country where you see it in red there. And you must be careful of the local inscriptions or boards that you don't miss it or that you're not already in the other side. It's even smaller than Bhutan. But it has a dragon. Ljubljana as a capital has a dragon in its coat of arms, so it connects it to Bhutan. So maybe because of that I'm here. So, as I said, the field of body-oriented psychotherapy, as we could call it, and it is called like that, is far from clearly defined and delimited, and you find all sorts of different approaches, from Gestalt therapy focusing to yoga and mindfulness, which are incorporated to some extent, but they do get increasing attention in psychotherapy, on the psychotherapy map, but they are not well articulated, they are not well based, and they don't have good theory behind it, or at least not a common ground theory. Why so? One of the reasons might be that it is hard to find words which touch body, and the other way around too. So we know from our own experiences, from experiences that we hear from our patients, that it is hard to explain, to describe what we are really feeling on a bodily level. And the more basic these feelings are, more harder are they to be described and to be shared with others. But as we also know, any conscious experience, everything we feel, think, and do stems from the body. It is fueled by bodily experiences, by sensations and emotional and cognitive counterparts. So body-oriented psychotherapy could be, with great benefits to the field, and more firmly, more theoretically based as it is until now, based on a thorough phenomenological analysis and on Buddhist analysis of experiences. For example, 5 skandhas. I will come back to that. We could say that, seen from a body perspective, that different emotional and psychological disbalances or mental disorders can be seen as manifesting in body tensions, uneasiness, pain, blockages. And the way to heal them would be to find a way first to define, identify them, describe them in order to work with them in psychotherapy, then to find and feel the flow, the energy, the life, which are all synonyms for health in that respect. There are some techniques that are used. Part of the mindfulness-based approaches, there is body scan, for example, or somatic treasure hunt, as was also called. Finding a safe space in the body and techniques leading to it. Somatic experiencing and sensory motor psychotherapy, which are main trauma-related psychotherapies. There's all different sorts of relaxation techniques that are used and employed. But that is only, I think, touching some aspects and to a limited extent. So, I won't go into the detail, but there is this CBAM approach to body experiences, to one of the main trauma-oriented psychotherapies, which is very similar and can be put in line with 5 skandha analysis, and they can work very nicely one with another together. I mentioned phenomenology as one platform that could serve for bringing these different techniques coming from different backgrounds together, and psychotherapy on the other side as a receiver of that insight. Because it has conceptual tools and it has good framework. These are based on works of Husserl, Heidegger, Merleau-Ponty, and many other philosophers that have contributed, but there are also many clinicians that have contributed to analysis, and I've done some work with my supervisors on schizophrenia for that matter. So it is already there. It is not based on a preformed theory, as many psychotherapies are. It's based on a so-called epoche, suspension of pre-knowledge ideas, concepts, prejudices. So it's open exploration or research. So that's why it can serve as I said, as an experiential Google Translate device and a lingua franca for them. And there have been, as I've already mentioned, few attempts there which are very rich and fruitful. Ipseity, minimal self-research for all sorts of psychotic experiences, mystical experiences, and also analyzing the differences, the common issues. There is a methodological approach of microphenomenology from French authors, who is also very fruitful, and there have been studies on studying contemplative practices, meditative practices through those lens. Also a wonderful work by a leading French phenomenologist, Nathalie Depras, The Glorious Body, who analyzed the teachings, the changes in the body in a Christian Orthodox tradition. A very rich, and to my mind and to my limited knowledge, also very, very similar to what has been discussed in today and is there in Vajrayānic practices and experiences evoked by them. So we could say that there are two lenses of a microscope. That's phenomenology on one side and Buddhist meditative analysis on the other. They can serve as bringing and seeing experiences from different angles, but defining and describing them together. What could be a contribution and contributions of Buddhist approaches, and why they are so relevant and important in treating, let's say, patients with chronic pain disorders, who are many, and they search many different means, and in Buddhist analysis and meditative practices, we treat phenomena as transient, and they are seen not as a monoliths that are there and searching for the treatment, as they are unchangeable in its nature and could be treated only from outside somehow, but they can be explored really as in a detailed way, in a explorative way, how transient they can be and can especially be treated with a different attitudes towards it, and that is what is taught in Buddhist perspective. And it has been proven by many studies now that mindfulness-based approaches to chronic pain, for example, do have... I try to go quickly with... Can you... as I said, there have been several approaches who have proven that and are working, but there is much more. They do employ certain aspects, but there is much more in the practices that could be taken in and inform the psychotherapy with it. Can you go with it? You can skip this and the next one further. Techniques, that's an important point, have also from Vajrayāna Buddhists have played a lesser role so far and have not informed the mainstream psychotherapy approaches. Next, please. But there are many techniques who can play that role, and I've just, again with my limited knowledge, named few. That's practices cultivating shamatha and vipassana, which do all include mindfulness. There are forms of chanting and visualizations, which all include body to an important extent. Then, especially important and neglected so far with mindfulness-based approaches, it is that there is this transformative potential in practices, not only observational, analytical one, but transformative. And they are all in many also complex and important practices. Cultivating of compassion and bodhicitta, not to forget. There are some forms of psychotherapy that have included that already, but it's still a lot to explore and to be invited to psychotherapy. Next, please. I'm coming to an end. There are some, I believe, natural resistances to decontextualization and secularization that have been there with mindfulness, taken from mostly Theravada tradition, namely that techniques and practices in Vajrayāna are complex, they are intertwined, hard to take in just one out of the context and testing it. They are taught in a personal way, as an esoteric, hidden practices. They have a world view with them that are sometimes, it provokes anxiety in people, and I've experienced some of the patients who really got scared and anxious when they have been presented some of the teachings. Heard it. They also resist the frivolous secularization and decontextualization of techniques because they tend to remain within the traditional context, and it is very important that they do so, but that makes them a bit more difficult to be translated into the mainstream scientifically oriented evidence-based psychotherapy. Next, please, and the last one. But they are ultimate healers in compassion and emptiness, and they will find a way how to do it, even if we are limited in doing that. Thank you for your attention.